Yaudah.
Welcome, everyone, to today's meeting of the American Clergy and Leaders Alliance. We are especially blessed this evening to have with us Britney Bouldin. I think that's pronounced
That's
correct.
right. Yep, you got it.
Not Bouldin.
No, it's
That would
not.
be she works with the National Moms for Liberty organization. So welcome, Britney.
Thank you.
And I would like to share just a little bit about your background,
Sure.
and I'll give you an opportunity to talk about your work. And I know you've got a little presentation to share as well. So someone shared your bio with me about how you always loved America, and growing up, your parents and grandparents made sure to teach you about people who sacrificed everything to give America her freedom. Britney has a master's degree in speech pathology and has helped young and old to improve their communication abilities. Once she started having children, she switched to part-time so she could stay at home with her 3 children as much as possible. With the direction that our country is headed, she decided to take action and started a Moms for Liberty chapter in Union County, North Carolina. And I believe you were doing that for 2 years as the chairperson in that local chapter.
Yes.
And then you were offered a job with the National Moms for Liberty organization as a chapter support specialist. So
Yes.
what is that? What does a chapter support specialist do?
So I'm basically triage. Basically, when people have problems or they have questions, I apologize. I had laryngitis up to about 3 days ago. I couldn't even talk. So I'm thankful that I actually have a voice tonight, but it's a little croaky. But chapters most of the people that are working with our organization have never been political before. They're mostly moms. I mean, we have dads too. We have grandparents, we have aunts and uncles, but most of the people are just not political. They just were doing their lives. They saw what was happening and they said, I got to do something. And so, we're all just kind of, we laugh as an organization because we are largely building the plane as we're flying it, because we're all learning on the job, because we are not political beings. And so there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of roadblocks, there's a lot of, oh, what do I do here? And so I'm just there to be a listening ear, to give advice, to help them through tough situations, sometimes talk them off the ledge of like, oh no, this is the worst thing in the world. Because we have a lot of opposition that likes to attack us, and that's new to us, and like completely foreign actually. And so you have to talk people through that. A lot of times, a lot of us, I know for me, I was prepared for the enemy fire, just from the opposition, from even though Moms for Liberty is nonpartisan. And you would think, if you hear what we stand for things that you could easily find on JFK's platform, right, and Reagan's platform. But the climate that our country is in right now, it typically puts us in the arena of we agree more with the Republican Party. But that hasn't always been the case. Our issues that we are fighting for are nonpartisan. They should be nonpartisan. So, but we're prepared for the people who disagree with us. But what's interesting is a lot of times we run up into problems with, people in the Republican Party, because they're like, who are these people that are coming in and getting involved and messing up our game board? And so when I first got pushed back from the local GOP, I was flabbergasted. I was like, wait, I was not. What I typically say is I was prepared for the enemy fire. I was not prepared for the friendly fire. And it just opened my eyes to just how much in trouble our country is in. And we're in trouble not just on the left. We have problems on the right as well. We need to get back to the basics. We need to get back to the roots of what this country was founded on. So anyway, so that's what I do. I just support, I encourage. I spend most of my time reframing what success looks like. It's really, sometimes you go to school board meetings and you speak every month and you don't have anyone showing up to your meetings, or you start off slow and small, and we have to reframe success. Success a lot of times looks like holding a hill and just not letting someone take it over. Sometimes success looks like answering into the void. Like, the left has had no pushback for so many years, and they've just marched just completely with nobody pushing back. And so sometimes success looks like you being there to push back, to be the one voice that's saying, no, we're not going to stand for this anymore. And that's okay. So I'm basically a cheerleader, I guess. An encourager, a cheerleader, a pastor, a counselor, whatever they need. I try to be there.
Well, that cheerleader role is actually really important, especially if the team is getting beat up by the other team and they're down by 30 points and it looks like the game's over. You need somebody to, people to encourage you. You need the fans and everybody to keep up the fight, right? Otherwise you're going to definitely lose if you don't have that fighting spirit and that, the desire to keep going.
You absolutely do. We like to say that you only lose if you quit. Period. You only lose if you quit, because if you learn from your mistakes and you grow and you keep going, then that loss is just part of your success story.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that you had so much pushback from the the Republican side. Although I know in general there's we're aware of what we call the rhinos, who pretend to uphold conservative values, but in reality they don't. But I didn't realize that affected you and your organization.
So I wouldn't say a lot. I wouldn't say it's a generalization. Like, it's not like I can't blanket that statement. It just depends on the county. Every county's different. It's its own little ecosystem, and it just depends on the personalities of the county. And sometimes you have a personality that has everything just like they want it, and they don't want new game pieces on the board, to mix things up. Sometimes it's for, I always go into a situation and I tell them, look, I need to own my part. I spent my entire life not being involved and just sitting on my laurels, living my life, and, basically taking from this great country and never taking responsibility for it. And the people that, have been in the GOP and they have been active, I don't blame them. I mean, some people are like, well, what are you doing here now? And why do you feel like you have a say now? So there's a little bit of a growing pains type thing of like, okay, how are we going to all get along? But it typically works out. You just have to keep showing up and being consistent. And then they start to realize, okay, you're not a flash in the pan that's just wanting to step in and make trouble and then leave. You're actually here and you're actually going to do the work. So I think it's a little bit of that kind of interplay that's going on. So I don't want to completely vilify the GOP, because we have so many great partners in the GOP. It just depends on the personalities.
Right. And I can tell you that in Lexington County, where I live, we actually have a lot of good people.
Yeah.
Very, very good and sincere conservative people who support Moms for Liberty. And I met somebody from Moms for Liberty at some of these meetings, local meetings.
That would be the vast majority, honestly. I mean, we've had so many partnerships with so many in the GOP. So I would say that would be the majority. It's more the exception than it is the rule.
Yeah, I did a quick search online just before the meeting tonight of Moms for Liberty, and there were several news articles popped up after the election, post-election,
Mhm.
I don't know if you've been exposed to any of that yet, but if there was, if there was any place where Moms for Liberty supported a candidate or something like that, um, and if that candidate lost, then of course the liberal media would rejoice and say,
Yeah.
"Oh, look, they failed," or something like that. And there's also some other article, and you maybe you'll be talking about this about book banning, because I heard that that's one of the big things that Moms for Liberty likes to do is just burn books.
Yeah.
Is that
That
correct?
they do like to say that. No, that they love to say that we're book banners. What we believe is that book banning is categorically different from choosing books based on age appropriateness. You can buy the book, you can write the book, you can print the book, you can do all those things. But it's still acceptable to say that certain books don't need to be read by children, by minors. Um, and that's reasonable. It's sane. And the fact that they're trying to make it out to not be that is ludicrous. It's a joke is really what it is. Anybody with half a brain can look at what we're talking about and know that it's categorically different from book banning.
Right. Yeah. I agree. I think that people who promote that kind of talk and those kind of talking points against Moms for Liberty, they're basically propaganda experts. They know how to use the language and to try to trick people and kind of make up these terms or apply certain terms that don't really apply. And a lot of people, if they're not educated about the issue, they'll fall for it.
Well, they repeat it over and over again. That's how propaganda works. If they repeat it enough times, then it becomes part of the vernacular and people accept it and believe it. And we say no. We say people are smarter than that. We say people are more logical than that. And we believe that most people know that children shouldn't have graphic, pornographic, obscene books. It's just
Right.
so. Um,
All
you know,
right, I'll let you. Sorry, I know you've got it. Thank
you're
you for
fine.
this presentation, but I guess that hopefully leads into what you're going to be talking about a little bit tonight.
It does, and it's fine. I created a presentation just in case, but I'm completely okay with on the fly as well. I was very on the fly with is it Bergie? Is that how you pronounce it?
Bergie, yeah, Bergie.
Bergie. I was very on the fly with Bergie, and we had a great time. So I can go either way. But I, like I said, I was just a mom. I I'm 100% responsible for squandering the gift that was given to me of this country until 2020. And 2020 happened, and I got a wake up call, and I didn't want to lose this country. I didn't want this to be the world that my children were growing up in. And it was scary, and I just needed to do something. So that's kind of what changed me. I will tell you, the part that I'm going to talk tonight that's about the education, the truth and education, the facts and things like that are definitely me representing Moms for Liberty. I will tell you though that I personally am a Christian, and I will be speaking about that as well. That part is coming from me, not Moms for Liberty, because Moms for Liberty is not it's not tied to any denomination. We have people that are Jewish in our organization. I'm sure we have people that are neither Jewish or Christian. There's no religious test to be a part of Moms for Liberty. But so I just want to be clear that the aspect where I talk about faith, it's my faith. Um, so I'm not representing Moms for Liberty. I will say though that a large amount of people in this fight are people of faith, whether it be Judaism, Christianity. I haven't met anyone outside of those two, but no, I mean, yeah, mainly those two. But they are largely a lot of people of faith, um, which I find to be interesting. Especially since I'm going to call out churches in general here in a minute. So just bear with me. But the truth in education is, to me, it is a very I'm very passionate about this topic because I think this is the part that churches need to see, what's going on. You know, Jesus himself changed how people in the world looked at children and treated children. And so I think that speaks to the value of children. And so I think it's important for us to look and see what is going on with our children in this country when they go into the government schools. I will tell you that I personally have my children in a public school. I am in a red county. So I'm very fortunate to have a situation where I can keep my kids in the public school with my eyes wide open and watching everything. Other people do not have that. People have to make what is the best decision for their family and for their children. And I have no judgment for people who do not have their children in public school. I have no judgment to people who choose to go to Christian school or choose to homeschool. I say everyone needs to do what they need to do. My issue is that I have seen many people leave the public school system, people even in my family that leave the public school system and they say, I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep trying to make the public schools better. And what ends up happening is they go to their homeschool or their Christian school. There are exceptions, but largely they go to their public or their homeschool or their Christian school and they get comfortable in their little bubble and they don't ever look back. And I have a problem with that because there are children that are left behind in a system that is actively harming them. And there are many parents that don't know what's going on. There's many parents that may agree with what's going on. But as a Christian, I personally couldn't leave those kids behind knowing that they were going to continue to be harmed, even though I knew that my kids were okay. So that is the reason why this topic is so passionate. It's such a passion for me. Okay, so we're going to start off with just the truth in education. Make sure I can do this right. There we go. So what is really happening in our government schools? And I'm going to refer to them as government schools periodically because that's basically what they are. The Moms for Liberty, one of the founders, Tiffany Justice, calls them the government schools. And I like that she does that because that reminds us that, you know, the government, they are the government schools. So the truth is that America's government schools are failing our children. The nation's report card by the National Assessment of Education Progress reported that nationally, 2 out of 3 children are not reading on grade level. 64% of 4th graders and 74% of 8th graders were not proficient in math. This is just this last year, by the way. Just 13% of 8th graders met proficiency standards for U.S. history, meaning that they could explain major themes, periods, events, people, ideas, turning points in the country's history. Is it no wonder why so many children are so susceptible to thinking that they need to hate our country because they don't know anything about our country? Additionally, about 20% of students scored at or above proficient level in civics. Okay. Both scores of the history and civics represent all-time lows on these 2 tests. So why are these, so it's obvious that they're failing. And I will tell you that I had civics in school, but ever since getting involved, I've noticed that even I'm almost 50. So I was, you know, taking civics probably in around 88, 89. And so I know I had the class civics, but I didn't learn. I mean, I've been on a huge learning curve getting involved because there was so much I did not know. And it's only gotten worse. So one second, I skipped something. So why are they failing? Okay, so schools are not focusing on their job, which is to educate our children in reading, writing, arithmetic, civics, and history. So what are they focusing on? Well, as you can see in this graphic that I made, this slide is covered in things that schools are focusing on, and none of it has anything to do with actual education. You can also see all the different plus signs. Those represent the things that I couldn't fit on here because I could probably fill this whole screen, but they also represent the constant barrage of new things being pushed into our schools that have nothing to do with reading, writing, and arithmetic on an almost daily basis. And they change the lingo, they change the terms. I mean, it's just to keep up it's like drinking from a fire hose. So now are you starting to see why they're possibly failing at teaching our kids actual education? What other industry can you neglect the job you were hired to do, get free funding to implement the things that have nothing to do with the job you were hired to do, and fail at doing the job you were hired to do and not be fired? I mean, everywhere else you would be fired, but in the education system, it doesn't matter how low the scores are. They just keep doubling down on doing the same thing they've always done. It's truly insanity. We don't have time to cover all of these things tonight, but I'll hit on the main ones that are creating the framework for transforming our schools into indoctrination centers. And that is what they are becoming, unless you have someone pushing back. Like in my Red County, we're pushing back, but it's still hard. We still have pockets. We still have teachers every now and then that my kids come across, and I've trained them. So they come in and they say, "Mom, this is what the teacher said today." And I'm like, okay. And so we talk about it, and I'm okay with it because I know that they'll end up in college, and I'm able to inoculate them with the little bit they're getting. So by the time they go to college, there's no professor has a chance with my kids. But other districts where it's not, where it's more liberal, it's complete indoctrination camps. It's not pockets, it's constant. So instead of education, they are focusing on Marxist and progressive ideologies. Other ways of thinking of ideologies are worldviews, lenses, religions, and belief systems. So we think, wait, hold on, school was supposed to be neutral. Isn't that why they took God out of our schools? Didn't we all hear that? To make it neutral, to make sure there was a separation of church and state? Yes, but then no. That's what we were told, but that's not actually what the intention was. And if I have time, we'll come back to it. But the people that were in charge of implementing, of getting the God taken out of schools, they had no intention of making it neutral. This was part of the plan, which sounds so conspiracy, whatever, but it's actually true. it's actually true. What everyone needs to understand is that government schools that are supported by our tax dollars are actively teaching belief systems. Students are being taught to see the world through a critical lens, which is not neutral. It actively works against what many parents teach at home, and it's all without parental consent, or knowledge. So what are these belief systems? Well, they stem from Marxism, which was historically thought to be a type of economic system, though present day scholars like James Lindsay, I don't know if y'all know who James Lindsay is, he's phenomenal, but present day scholars like James Lindsay are showing how these theories, when put into practice, are actually a belief system or religion, and a disastrous one at that. So I always grew up thinking Marxism was an economic system, and it's not. If you look at how it's being practiced in the schools and implemented, it's a religion. It's straight up a belief system. Some examples of these are critical race theory, critical gender theory, globalism, which is critical nationalism theory, climate change, which is eco-communism, and the new post-colonial theory, which you're hearing a lot of right now with Palestine, with Gaza, and how they're calling the Jewish Israel colonizers. That comes from post-colonial theory. It's important to understand that these are all one religion. They're all part of Marxism. They're just different practices, or for those of us who are familiar with church, they're just different denominations. One of the tenets of this overarching religion is to separate people into haves and have-nots. It creates a critical consciousness, which causes division and destruction. Based on the destruction it has caused already in the 20th century, and then now what we're witnessing today, it can only be a religion that's straight from Satan. That is my personal opinion. So how are these belief systems getting into our schools? Well, there is a I can't see. Okay, there is a delivery system. So SEL. A lot of people say that CRT, critical race theory, was replaced by SEL, which is social and emotional learning. That's not actually true. Social emotional learning is basically the delivery system for all these different theories, all these different denominations of Marxism. I had on this screen at first that so I took it off because I was like, oh, I don't want to be too funny, but now I'm going to tell you what it was. But I said social emotional learning is the deceptive delivery system for all the different Marxist ideologies of the month club. Because that basically feels like what happens. It's like every month there's like a new ideology that they're bombarding us with. But the new Marxists of our time learned from the 20th century that Marxists that it's hard, expensive, dangerous to conquer a society, indoctrinate the masses by force. So what they've done is they figured out a way to do it where everyone thinks it is great. So now you enter social emotional learning. Social and emotional learning deceptively uses psychology to manipulate students to accept these different critical theories. Using psychological terms also makes it sound like something good. Who wouldn't want their child to be better at regulating their emotions? That sounds like a great idea, except for that's not really what they're doing. It teaches the children how to look at everything through an equity lens. So basically it teaches in the classrooms, it teaches the kids, because the argument is always, you would hear from like the left, we're not teaching critical race theory in K through 12. That's like a graduate level course. Well, they're right. That is a graduate level course when you're learning about the theory. What they don't tell you is what they're doing in K through 12 is they're not teaching about the theory, they're implementing the theory, right? So they're not teaching the kids about critical race theory. They're showing the kids a world through a lens where everything is critical, where everything is broken up into oppressor or oppressed. Does that make sense? I'm sure all of y'all probably do a lot of this. I'm trying to kind of fly through it. So it uses these lenses to redefine and create trauma out of thin air. So if you break people up into oppressor versus oppressed, and it's not based on anything that's actually controllable, it's skin color, it's religion, it's all these things that are ridiculous. But so let's take skin color. If you're breaking people up into oppressor versus oppressed based on skin color, they don't actually have real trauma, right? It's they're creating trauma out of thin air. So no one has to actually have trauma. You just get told that you have trauma based on what group you're in. And then they say, okay, well now that there's trauma, since trauma is happening, we have to figure out, okay, it's baked into the structures of society. Well, so since it's baked into the structures of society, then everyone's affected. Well, since everyone's affected, then we need everyone in school to receive trauma-based therapy using SEL. Do you see how that works? An example of how, well, hold on. They basically use the need for SEL in everything because of societal trauma as a way to inject the critical belief system lenses into all subjects. So an example, so like math, let's say the kids are learning about math and it's a word problem and they're talking about how Johnny goes to the park or the amusement park and his dad takes him to the amusement park one day and the teacher stops and he says, who here in the classroom has ever been to an amusement park? And so almost everybody in the class raises their hands except for like two people. And so then the teacher goes, well, how come y'all haven't ever been to an amusement park? And the kids might say, well, because we don't have the money to go to an amusement park, or we don't have a car to drive to an amusement park, or my mom works, she has two jobs, so we have no time to go to an amusement park. Well, so then the teacher, that's called a generative theme. So they take this generative theme and they use it to generate an issue to talk about critical theory. So they say, oh, well, I'm sorry that you can't go to the theme park because y'all don't have enough money. Well, that's not fair, is it? Class, is that fair that he can't go to the amusement park because he doesn't have enough money? Well, why do y'all think he doesn't have money? And before you know it, the teacher has taught the whole class that the reason why Johnny doesn't have enough money is because he has a certain skin color and everyone that got to go to the theme park has a different skin color. And it doesn't always have to be skin color. It can be gender. It could be, well, because he's gay and everyone else is heterosexual or cisgender as they call it. So that's how they use SEL to inject these critical theories into math. So you hear all these things about how they're teaching critical theory in math, and you're like, how are they doing this? Well, that's how they're doing it. It's very deceptive. So one thing that we need to know about this is SEL has been in all of our schools since about 2016. Common Core was a big part of bringing SEL in. But what they're not saying is that many schools have seen rapid decline in proficiency after implementation of SEL, which I just showed you on like the second slide, right? We have the worst scores ever. Kids are not learning how to read. Additionally, reports show a massive increase in mental health issues after implementing SEL. Lastly, SEL is a massive moneymaker for companies that produce school resources on the taxpayer's dime. It is estimated that by 2025, SEL will be a $3.5 billion market. They're making bank on our children. Okay. Other things that are influencing that I'm not going to have time to go deep into, and there's more than even this, but these were the only other three that I thought were really important as part of the framework of what's creating the problems that we see in schools. One is restorative justice. It's basically a belief system, and it uses these critical theories. Again, it's a belief system that people are bad because of systemic oppression that's baked into society. So their actions aren't actually their fault. They are society's fault. The idea is that they try to restore the person to the person that they were meant to be if only they weren't oppressed. And then they would stop making bad choices. In reality, you end up with just repeat offenders and usually an escalation of bad behavior. You see this, why we see this in the prosecutors in counties and how they're not prosecuting all these people that are shoplifting, or I mean, we saw it during the George Floyd stuff. Like none of those people got arrested, and it was because that they were oppressed, and so they could do the things that they were do. That it made sense because they're oppressed, and so they have a right to do it. One of the things that I would like to tell y'all about is there was a guy that was investigating restorative justice, And because he started noticing that his mom, who was a teacher, she was commenting on how the violence at school had gotten so bad, and she was concerned for her safety. He was a reporter, so he started researching on it, and he started asking around about this restorative justice. And um, he asked the people that are in charge. He goes, "Show me where this is working. Show me your flagship school of where you've implemented this and you're seeing great successes. I want to see this in action." And the school that they told him to look at was Parkland School, the one that had the big shooting, um, which is interesting because after that shooting, that same reporter went and started investigating that shooting. And if you ever want to pick up a book about restorative justice, the book Why Meadow Died would be a very good one to pick up. And it talks about how that shooting happened because of restorative justice. If you go back and you look at the record of the guy who did that shooting, he was never taken care of. He just kept getting put back into the system. They kept flagging him. At one point, he kicked out his mother's teeth, but nothing was ever done because of restorative justice. So schools are getting increasingly dangerous because of this. Another one is comprehensive sex education. This is the belief that all humans have a right to sexual pleasure regardless of age. It's all based on the research of Alfred Kinsey, where he partnered with a child predator to research sexual pleasure as early as 6 months of age. I'm not going to go deep into that, but it's awful. So now, based on his research, comprehensive sex education is being pushed into schools. UNESCO and Planned Parenthood are big pushers of comprehensive sex education. This is largely why this is one of the reasons why so much inappropriate and obscene materials have been pushed into schools, is because of this comprehensive sex education. It's also pushed into schools because they say that people who are not cisgender, so if you're gay or any of the LGBTQ, that they need to see representation of who they are, and they also need to see how to do what they want to do sexually, because they don't get that in the mainstream. I feel pretty confident that most of those kids get internet or something like that. We don't need to have it in our schools. Okay. So why Christians should care? Because we're supposed to care about people. Jesus said that the second greatest commandment was to love your neighbor as yourself. And people are being harmed. And like I said before, Jesus changed how the world treated children, and children are being harmed. And largely, I what it's going to take is involvement from the masses. And I feel like the Christian community should be some of the first to be leading the charge, because of what we believe in the Bible. And it's just not happening. I do see a lot of Christians in this fight, but I see so many on the sidelines, and I'm dumbfounded. I really am dumbfounded. Children are being actively harmed in two ways that I see, other than just physical, just with the increased danger in schools. But children are actively being harmed by not being taught what they're supposed to be learning. To me, that's harmful. They are also being harmed by teaching them destructive beliefs that harm them personally and harm society on a whole, which also will affect them. If their society, as Christians, we should care about our society, right? We should be improving our society. If these children are taught these things, these destructive ideologies, it's going to affect negatively our society on a whole, which will affect all of us, which we should care about. Somehow, politics became a dirty word in the church and among Christians in general. I'm not sure where that happened or how that happened. Y'all might have a better idea. I need help figuring it out because I've speculated that separation of church and state, the that lie of separation of church and state, which I didn't know until I started doing this. I always thought that was a thing. It's actually not in the Constitution. It was a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to a pastor because he was concerned about the government infringing on religion. And Thomas Jefferson basically wrote him this letter saying, no, that's not going to happen because the way it's set up, the government can't infringe on religion, the practicing of religion, because of separation of church and state. But it's not in the Constitution, and it's even being represented, even if it wasn't the Constitution, it's still being represented wrong. It's being represented as to keep religion out of the government, but actually the whole point of the letter was keeping the government out of religion. So the whole thing's just wrong. The other thing I think I can think of that could be causing Christians to be more afraid of getting into politics is the fear of losing tax exemption. I know that's a big concern for churches. And so I think, my father-in-law actually was a Baptist minister. And so I know that then when I started doing this work, my husband and I had a big discussion. He's passed, and I wish he wasn't because I would love to have this conversation with him. But we had a big discussion one night because he said my dad would have never mentioned politics from the pulpit. And at first I was like, okay, but the more I started doing this work, I'm like, well, wait a minute. There's a difference between standing up in the pulpit and actively telling people who to vote for, as opposed to standing in the pulpit and challenging congregations to get involved. Like that's very different. Or talking about just policies in general. So I don't know if that's part of it, that when the pastors were afraid to talk about it from the pulpit, that just kind of bled into the congregation and the church on a whole, just thinking that, okay, we just can't really do politics in church. I don't know. I'm speculating completely here. Was it saying, we've all heard the saying, you shouldn't talk about sex, money, politics, and religion. Well, why is that a saying? I mean, those are pretty important things that can destroy lives, right? Like, the more I've kind of been doing this, the more I started thinking about that saying, and I'm like, that shouldn't be a saying. We should be talking about those things. Those are the things where people are sinning and people are getting lost in. And why are we not talking about them? So I don't know. That's just my thoughts. Hold on. I just lost my place. Okay. So all I can say is that what is being taught in school, these are false doctrines. And in the history of Christianity, when has it ever not been okay to call out false doctrines or sin? But I think what's happened here is Satan's done this. I think it's interesting. I think he has pulled the fight of spiritual issues into, like on purpose, into the political arena because he knows that politics is kryptonite to the church and to Christians. And sadly, I think it's working in a lot of ways. The church that I was recently in, we just switched churches, but I honestly felt like I had to hide the work I'm doing in my church because I felt like they were gonna, like, I don't know, disown me or shun me or tell me to be quiet or and I don't know why that is. Like, why is that the culture of some churches? It shouldn't be. We should be talking about these issues. We have to re-engage. Politics is downstream from culture, but culture, I believe, is downstream from the church. And we have to get back into the fight of culture. Ohio, now, I would question election integrity in Ohio, but Ohio just voted for legal to put in their state constitution legal abortion up into the point of birth. And this bill was written in such a way with such vague language that it's also probably going to be used for children to get abortions and probably get what they call gender affirming care, which I call body mutilation without parental consent. It's a very dangerous thing that they just did. And I mean, we that's not politics. That's a heart issue. That's spirituality. That is people's hearts are hard where we're gonna allow the killing. Anytime I see abortion, I on any social media in the comments below, I always rewrite whatever it was they said where they use the word abortion and I put murder of the unborn because they like to use these tricks where they use these language, but we are murdering the innocent preborn child. That is not a political issue. That is a spiritual issue. All of these issues are mutilating minors' bodies is a spiritual issue. To be okay with that is a spiritual issue. We have to get back in the fight. We really have to. And so that just takes you to this slide here where as Christians, we care about people. We're called to care about people. Well, policy affects people and politics affects policy. So if we're going to care about people, we have to care about politics. And I talk as much as I can, and I probably frustrate a lot of people because I'm a little bit dogmatic and I don't give up very easily. I used to I used to say to my dad, because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and for the longest until about 3 years ago, actually. But I used to say to my dad that I was born in the wrong time. I needed to be born during the revolution because that was the spirit I had, was just to not give up and to charge for something. And he used to make fun of me because he used to say, you're trying to make revolutions out of just everyday things, and we need you to stop because it's really exhausting as a parent. But then 2020 happened, and I felt like God was like, and now this is why you have that personality. So I feel called to this. I feel called to argue this point about Christians in churches getting back in the game. I think I've made a lot of people upset and uncomfortable because of that, but I haven't heard God tell me to stop, so I'm not going to. I will tell you one thing that I want to specify because the signs of the time point, nobody knows when the second coming is going to happen. We will not know the time, but we do see signs. And I do know that some Christians have the mentality of, look, Jesus looks like it looks like he's about to come back. Why are we even do anything? And my argument to that is that we're supposed to occupy. I mean, Paul talked about this when the disciples wanted to just hang out because they thought Jesus was just going to come right back. And no, we're supposed to be occupying. And I do not have my hope or faith, and nor do I think any Christian that gets into this work and that decides to re-engage, I do not have my hope and faith in a government. I do not have it in a politician. I do not have it in a law. I do not have it in an organization. My hope and my faith is in Christ and Christ alone. What I will say is I know that, and this is how I keep my hope. I don't really get down very often. I was before, but then God kind of took me on a trip and straightened me out. And here's what I've come down to. One time, early 2020, I read a story about David and Goliath, and it was talking about how we learned that lesson wrong. And it's true. I grew up thinking David beat Goliath. And this story was talking about, and I guess it was a sermon, but it was talking about how David didn't beat Goliath. God beat Goliath. David was used by God because David was obedient. So the way I see it as Christians, it's not our job to save the world. It's not our job to save the country. it's our job to be obedient to God. It's our job to look to God and be obedient. And that's what I'm trying to do on a daily basis. And this is God's war. This is God's battle. We know how it ends. It's good news. So my hope is in that. I just get up every morning. I remind myself of that fact. I put my eyes on the Lord and I just try to be obedient. And I know that God would not want me to sit back while children are being harmed. He just wouldn't. So that's my pitch, if you will.
All right. Thank you, Brittany. That was incredible. And I know you really shared from your heart, and everybody listening appreciated that. If you like, you can go ahead and unshare your screen.
Oh, yep.
But
And I'll tell you, I'm not a theologian. I literally just read the Bible all the way through for the first time last year. I'm almost done with my second round. So if I quoted anything wrong, if I got anything wrong theologically, forgive me, and just know that just know where my heart's coming from, I guess. And feel free to correct me, because I'm always willing to learn.
I mean, I think you make a good point in the fact that a lot of times theologians they think they know too much about the Bible, and they kind of miss the real points. I like your story about the way you talked about David and Goliath, and kind of what that lesson is. As sometimes, we talk about that in order for God to accomplish things, to accomplish his will, it's like we just have like a very small percent. We just have to do something. We just have to do a little bit. We say that's our 5%. And when we do our 5%, then God can do the other 95%, but he requires our faith that we have. But he does need us to have faith, right? To step forward.
Yes. And it's exciting. It's fun to be used by God. It really is.
Yes, it is.
It's easy. I mean, it's been hard. The last 3 years have been very hard. I've cried many, many tears, but the things I've seen God do have changed me, and I will never be the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can also sense your deep patriotism. I think our founding fathers never imagined that the government would grow to the size and the amount of power and control that it has now. In fact, that's they were trying to go the opposite way.
Yes.
So in terms of politics affecting policy and affecting people, the more government control that you have, and that happens through even taxes. Like, say, well, churches don't want to lose their tax exempt status, so that's how they control people. Or through education, well, you start with the young, and then putting in all these other controls into place, then it really prevents people from expressing their God-given value and their God-given gifts.
Yep.
So it is a battle that we're in, and I totally agree with you that we do need to take territory and hold it. That's what God was trying to do when he created this country, and it's time to take it back and make sure that this remains God's country.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Well, actually, we're getting to the top of the hour already. So,
I'm sorry, that was long.
No. That was a wonderful and very powerful presentation. Yeah, I guess.
I have time.
You have some time? Okay.
Yeah.
So I would just like to mention, what like, for example, it's called Moms for Liberty, but you have dads who are involved as well.
Dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles. I mean, we have some dads that are chapter chairs. We have one couple that do it together, and the mom had a baby, and so the dad took the chapter chair for a few months, and then they switched back once she kind of got up and running again. So,
right. And I guess the best way to find out more about your organization is momsforliberty.org.
correct.
That's moms, FOR, moms for liberty spelled out, right?
Yes, everything's spelled out.
Momsforliberty.org.
And if you want to find, if you're on Facebook, if you want to find, see if there's one in your area, most of them have a Facebook page. Well, they all have to actually have a Facebook page, but on the website, there's a drop down that's find a chapter, and there's a map, and you just click on your state and then click on your county. And if you see that you have one in your county, then you can get on Facebook and look for it.
Yeah, I went and looked at that website today too. That was really good. I really like the way the map was done. So it's very easy to find the local chapter or your nearest chapter. And if you don't have a local chapter, you could still benefit from what Mom for Liberty has to offer and some of the educational materials and insights and things too that are on the website. Well, if you have a few more minutes, maybe we can take a couple of questions.
Sure, I've got time.
Anybody have a question or comment you'd like to make? Just, okay, Dr. Pereira.
You said something about see the world through lenses.
Yes.
It reminded me, and that is such a good expression. It reminded me of a guy in Brazil in the 60s. His name is Paulo Freire.
Mm-hmm.
You heard that name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He wrote a book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And if you start reading that book, he will say that not everybody will finish the book, but in order to get the benefits of this book, he said you have to read the entire thing. First, I didn't know why he would say that, but the thing is, it took reading all that much in order to come and to begin to see the world through the lenses that he wanted to provide. And the lens is very simple. The world is a marvel of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It's a marvel of relationships. When we study the teachers that we do here, it's always the intricacies of relationships that keep it together, and the kind of the energy that we generate by being in relationships. We talk about relationships between parents and children, brothers and sisters. We talk about husband and wife, parents and then parents, to finally to become a parent again. And by the way, you said, I'm just a mom. Just like a guy walking in, so I just play for the NBA.
Yeah.
And one of the things you say, the world will be saved by true parents. Yeah. And that's what we need. Anyway, this guy, Paulo Freire, he also, he got money from the government to teach people how to read. So he went all over Brazil. He had an army of teachers, and they was teaching. In the teachings, he was showing the intricacies of relationships and showing oppression. Mm-hmm. Oppression. Mm-hmm. And then you have, in order to improve the world, you have to fight. You have to hate the oppression. Mm-hmm. And Jesus Christ, he said, love God, love your neighbor. That's it. That's the laws. We don't need anything else. So he was impacting the relationships. Mm-hmm. And I always think, one of the most important thing to be a communist, one of the most important thing that you need to do is to break the relationship between children and parents. Somehow you portray your children as the ones who are destroying the world. How? In the United States, we say, look at the SUV they're driving. Mm-hmm. That's killing us. Mm-hmm. There you go. Mm-hmm. If it's only a 7-year-old boy, or girl. And anyway, thank you. And one little comment about David and Goliath. It said, I love that part of the Bible. One thing that God helped him with is to bring a couple of 2 or 3 lions now and then for him to be able to fight the lions and keep. And he got very good at maneuvering his slingshot. Mm. And eventually that's all it took.
Yeah. I love that part.
Yes, it's an amazing thing. Social and emotional learning, that itself, that is such a good thing. You know, it's because we are uh, we in our teaching we say, you know, God is mostly heart, which is a seat of emotion. And like Jesus said, you know, love, love, love. That's it. And how do you know you're Christian? Jesus said, well, by the way you love each other. That's how you're going to know how you. It's all about the learning. But the communists, they take a beautiful expression and they give it a different meaning. You know, it's just like, for example, global warming, or you know, if you use some technical term that sounds good, you know, but the reality is
Yeah.
something else. Anyway,
Well, I think part of loving as a Christian is also telling the truth. But and with the
yes,
communism and with all these critical theories, that's not telling the truth. um,
exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
I think that's a largely what I think what I've noticed, at least with the church that we just left. You know, I didn't find anything doctrinally wrong with the pastor and what he was preaching, and I think that he is a godly man, and I love him, and he has great love for people. But he would sometimes I think we double down on love as Christians at the expense of truth, right?
Uh,
It's we're so
mhm,
afraid to tell the truth because we don't want to be seen as unloving.
yeah. Ah,
But it's very loving to tell people the truth. It's
yeah.
not loving to lie to people.
That's right.
So,
No, I agree with you about that. Um, also, I wanted to say that you know, I'm a grandfather. I have six grandchildren, and every day I pray for them.
mhm.
But I think teachers like you are the answer to my prayers,
Oh,
because um, you know, you are heroes because you're out there in the front line, a position where you can make a difference. And so when you say I'm just a mom,
well, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Makes the tough days a little easier.
All right, Vicky, would you like to say something?
Brittany, thank you for sharing all
You're
that you
welcome.
did. Um, I agree with you when you were talking about how children are being harmed deeply. And we know Christ deeply loved the children and told us we need to be like them. Um, I was wondering if you could maybe share one or two stories of something that's really touched your heart since you've been doing this, showing what God is doing, what He's done, and just something that you could share.
Well, trying to think. There's been a lot that he's done. I can tell you that in my, and this is going to get probably a little bit dicey because I know that even within the conservative community and even in the Christian community, COVID was a little bit dicey. People had difference of opinions, but I will tell you, as a mom, I saw much harm during COVID. My children, in particular, had mask harm. My son, I think he was having panic attacks all day long because your innate response to having both of the places where you get oxygen covered, um, is to panic a little bit, right? But as adults, we have that frontal lobe executive functioning ability to say, it's okay, I can still breathe. But children don't have that. So I would pick him up from school, and he would, every single day, he would either have a fit of rage for like about 15 minutes, or he would have a fit of rage and then melt into tears. And then after about 15, 20 minutes, it would be done. Well, once we got masks removed, he never did that again. And so I started thinking, and I started talking with a friend of mine who's a psychologist, and we were thinking that I wonder if, instinctively, if he was in a fight or flight thing the whole time. So, through my work with Moms for Liberty, we were actually able to get, and we weren't even asking for no mask. We just said we would like it not to be mandated. We know our children best. We know that children are not a vector of the spread of the virus. And so if we have mask harm, we would like to be able to opt out our children for wearing the mask. And luckily, our school board is mostly conservative. We have 8-1, and they were really ready to stand up. And when we came on the scene and started supporting them, it gave them the support they needed to stand up. And so they ended up voting for mask optional in our school. And the state of North Carolina came after them. They threatened my school board with injunction, our school district with injunction, which means that they would come in and they would take possession of the entire school district because of mask optional. At one point, we had 7,000 children in quarantine because the governor's quarantine policy was punitive. It was extortion. If the person who ended up testing positive for COVID had a mask on, nobody in the classroom had to quarantine. But if the child that tested positive for COVID didn't have a mask on, then everybody had to be quarantined. So it was geared to make people comply. And so it put parents in a bad situation where we had to, we were having to put our children in the front lines, right? But yeah, so the state came after us, and our school board stood up, and we had people from all over the state calling me, calling our school board, saying, hold the line, keep standing up for these kids. The amount of education loss over COVID because of the quarantines and the kids being shut out of school is unbelievable. And my school district actually was top in the state for that year because we were the only ones that went back into school and did like mask optional. But yeah, there were many votes that we thought, we're not going to win this one. We're not going to win this one. And we had people from all over the state saying, we are praying, we are praying, we are praying, we are praying. And at one point, the Union County, North Carolina school district was literally holding the line for the whole state. And our goal was to get other school boards to join in. And we felt like if we had enough school boards to go together, that the governor would have to back down. And he finally did, but that was right about the time that all the stuff was being relaxed anyway. And so I think he just decided to stop fighting us. So that was miraculous. That was just like, it was mind blowing.
There's a great power in prayer.
There is. I will tell you also what's been really encouraging to me that I've seen in God's work is that I love the fact, my favorite thing about God. How do you say your favorite thing about God? One of my favorite things, though, about being a Christian is the redemption, the fact that God redeems everything. There's really no time to be hopeless, because even in the valleys, there's hope because God redeems it all. And the detransitioners that we've met in the work that we're doing, the ones that have had, there's this one girl named Chloe Cole who had, she had a double mastectomy, I think at age 12. and she'll never be the same. And the doctors told her parents that if they didn't help her transition to be a boy, that she would commit suicide. And so it's emotional extortion is what it is. And so they felt like they didn't have a choice. And she has every reason in the world to be depressed and sad and hopeless, but she's not. She's out there and she's leading the charge and she's speaking up and she's trying to get justice for the people that are the doctors who have done this to these children. And she's trying to bring hope to other people who have been victims of it. And she's trying to warn the world that this is not okay and this is not good and this is really, really bad. And she's changing the narrative. That's been amazing to see. I mean, it's just all been so amazing.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. So we can maybe have a few more minutes if anybody else has a question. Otherwise, we can wrap things up here. So many wonderful points that we heard from you tonight, Brittany, and God bless you for the work that you're doing. How important it is that Christians get involved in the society, especially again where you have people who have nothing to do with God controlling the government and making policy and things like that. I like to refer to it as political Satanism.
Yeah.
Basically what it is, where politics gets to control people's behavior, what they can do, what they can't, control their money, and the people who are making those decisions have nothing to do with God and are separated from God. So Satan has always actually used that in history, controlling the government. And so we have to fight that. I know there's a lot of righteous people, good people who are trying to get into positions of office, and especially next year's elections will be very important. But there's so many local battles that are being fought by patriots and by good Christians and people like you, Brittany, that we are very grateful for.
Well, let me just tell you that I'm grateful for y'all and that this group is even a thing. Y'all have given me hope to see that there are people that are Christians that are part of churches that are leading churches that are actually engaging and realizing that we need to engage. And so I just thank you guys for being here and for doing what you're doing and giving me some hope. So, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you again for your time. Bergie, do you have anything?
I just want to say thank you. My heart is very touched from all the empowering and beautiful words, and for your faith to be on the front line.
Amen.
And I just appreciate you coming, and we should be in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
If y'all need anything, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email is Britney, BRITNEY @momsforliberty.org.
Yeah, I will also send it out to the group so they can contact you directly if they have a question. We just so appreciate that. Really beautiful. Thank you for sharing with us, and God bless you. We'll pray for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I need all of it.
Have a good night, everyone. God bless.
Good night.
Good night.